It's Only Sport with Martin Devlin on the platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Friday, day before Bledisloe Cup Day. There is NRL this weekend, obviously the AFL Grand Final as well. It is time to talk some rugby league. Storm Roosters tonight, Panthers Sharks tomorrow. A very warm welcome back onto the program from the Continuous Call team, and these guys are absolutely brilliant. We had them on at Radio Sport every Sunday. I love them to bits. Mark Levy joins us. Welcome back, mate.
Martin, how are you? All my friends over there in NZ.
We are doing just fine, my friend. I can't talk to you, obviously, without first acknowledging our dear mate, David Morrow, and I know he's such a great mate of yours. He was such a kind friend of our show, and I'm sure that every time you guys get together and you're doing any broadcasting since his sad passing, he's uppermost in your thoughts. So heart is with you as always, my friend.
Thank you, Martin. And he spoke glowingly about you. He enjoyed his chats with you on a weekly basis too, mate, and he loved speaking to everybody over in New Zealand. And, yeah, we renamed our studio where we call the footy from the David Morrow studio, and it was our Olympic studio as well, so he would have been really chuffed by that. But I'm just delighted that we were able to let him know prior to his passing that he was an inductee into the Rugby League Hall of Fame, because to watch the tears roll down his face when we told him of that honour, it was pretty powerful stuff.
Before we get into just talking about these games, obviously the big news is Kevin Walters going. Did that come as a major surprise for you?
Huge surprise. To be honest, I can't believe they've done it. He's one of the favourite sons of the club. They all love him. Dave Donaghy, the CEO, stood there today and spoke about, how everyone loves him and he brought the heartbeat back to the Broncos. Well, if he brought the heartbeat back to the Broncos, what, are they now flatlining? I mean, we're talking about a coach who took over the club in 2020 when they were wooden spooners. They went to 14th to 9th, to runners-up, and then this year, they failed, finishing 12th. There's a lot of coaches in the competition doing a lot worse than that, yet they're going to punt Kevin Walters. You watch everyone blow up in Brisbane over the coming days. Not good.
All right, the Kalyn Ponga thing as well. Look, I'm not name-dropping, but I just happened to bump into Monty Beetham on the plane today. Monty, of course, is the selector now for the Kiwis, and both of us agree that this is very hypocritical of the NRL. I think that, what the mistake that Kalyn and Newcastle made is very just a basic communication thing. Look, if you are going to declare yourself unavailable, the best thing you can do is actually give the coach a call or the selectors a call and actually explain your reasons. You don't just put out a press release. Okay, black mark for that. But for the NRL to get all uppity about this when they haven't given us stuff about International League, mate, it's a little bit hypocritical, isn't it?
I agree, and I know my opinion isn't popular with some in the game, but I don't understand how you can force a bloke to play when he doesn't want to do it. And the other point I would make is Kalyn Ponga the first choice fullback for the Kangaroos? And in my opinion, no. I think James Tedesco was probably the walk-up start for the Kangaroos' number one jumper, given the form he's currently showing in the NRL at the moment for the Roosters. But I'm a bit like you. I find it hypocritical that the NRL talks about the need to look after player welfare and player safety and all that sort of thing, and then they turn around and say to a bloke who doesn't want to play for Australia and doesn't want to play rep football, you have to play rep football? Come on.
Look, you can't force you've got kids, I've got kids. You can't force anyone to do anything. These are grown men we're talking about. And look, the guy knows himself. He's had, a catalogue of injuries. He's had the concussion problems and everything else. I'm sure it's not because he doesn't want to play for Australia. But again, I just think that there's also a communication issue and there's a polite way of going about these things, isn't there? Yeah.
Look, the first thing I'd say is the Knights have handled this atrociously. They should have spoken to Kalyn, and look, I know of players in the past, without mentioning any names, that have feigned injury to get out of playing representative games because they were either burnt out or their body was busted and they didn't want to do it. So that I think has been poorly handled by Newcastle, and Andrew Johns, the eighth immortal, has made that point. He said it's just a rabble up there at the moment, given the way this has been handled. But there's some people out there saying, oh well, if he doesn't want to play rep football for Australia, why is he playing for Queensland if his sole focus is the Newcastle Knights? The difference here is we're at the end of a very long rugby league season.
There you go.
He's entitled to a break, and in the middle of the year when we play State of Origin, he can go and play State of Origin and then come back and play for his club if need be. He only misses 1 week. Where this is, he's got to get himself back up to play rep football for Australia. And what I think needs to be looked at is the timing of when we play these things. It's all well and good for the NRL to say, oh, we're putting all of our eggs into the basket and we're saying, oh, we're going to push this Pacific Championships. But at the same time, you've got to consult the RLPA and all the other stakeholders in the game. And if they don't want to play it, they don't have to play it.
Look, and, I can't remember, was the Rugby League World Cup, was it last year or the year before? But that season that it was, by the time you tack in, and, I've played most of the 27 round robin, then there's obviously the finals which go up a level, then there's Origin in the middle of that, and then there's a World Cup at the end of that. I mean, look, we've got rugby players here in the country that get rested in round 2 of Super Rugby, for God's sake, mate. I mean, when you're packing in 30 to something games a season, then you're actually back into pre-season training. I mean, it's like football at the moment in Europe. You've actually physically got to give these blokes a break, don't you?
Yeah, and this is the other aspect of this is the new collective bargaining agreement that was signed by the Rugby League Players Association. And Martin, I was quite critical of the RLPA when this was all going on, because they were threatening strike action. And, in Australia at the moment, we're in the midst of a cost of living crisis. People can't afford to go to the footy. They can't afford to pay for their memberships. And you've got, multi-million-dollar players whinging about their salaries and their conditions. Some of them get 9-10 weeks off a year. So there's that angle to it as well. But I just think, in respect to Kalyn Ponga, if a bloke doesn't want to play, he makes it clear to the coach that he doesn't want to play. Well, if you're Mal Meninga, would you really pick him in the Australian team? I wouldn't.
There you go. No. What is more chance of happening, my friend? The Roosters beat the Storm or the Sharks beat the Panthers?
No, I'm going to be honest with you. I think we could have a couple of ugly preliminary finals this weekend. I think Melbourne and Penrith are streets ahead of the competition and the opposition. I think they're capable of putting on quite a number of points this weekend. And I was just doing some work on the game that I'm calling tomorrow night for the continuous call team, the Sharks and the Panthers. The Sharks have lost 90-0 to the Penrith Panthers in their last few games. So it could get ugly for the Sharks. It could get ugly for the Roosters.
Good stat. That's a great stat. Mark, we saw this last year, and I keep referencing this. Penrith and Brisbane last year smoked Melbourne and the Warriors in both games, reverse games. Are we going to see, is that what you're indicating that or insinuating that that's what we're going to see this year, that these two teams are just 20, 30 points better than the rest?
Yeah, that's what I think. And if you look at history, and I've said this for a long, long time, we either get 2 cracking preliminary finals and a dud grand final, or we get 2 ordinary preliminary finals and we get a cracker grand final like we had last year. I think it'll be the latter. I think we're in for a really, really tightly fought grand final next week.
Why are these two teams so much better than the rest, and why have they been that way all year, given the fact they've also had a fair whack injuries?
Well, the Panthers are just this football side that continue to do. It's like, I call it a production machine of rugby league players through their pathways and everything else. When one goes down, you bring another one in and they just do the job. But when you've got the best player in the world in Nathan Cleary guiding you around the park, and, the non-story this week about, is his shoulder going to be okay? Did you watch him in the qualifying final in the first tackle of the game? His shoulder will be absolutely fine. So keep an eye on him. He'll be brilliant tonight. And then the Melbourne Storm, you can never underestimate a team coached by Craig Bellamy. And, Jerome Hughes has been outstanding. Ryan Pappenhausen at the back. One of the other great players that I love watching, and he's now getting the raps that he deserves, is Harry Grant, the number 9 for the Storm. His darts out of dummy half, the way in which he, controls the game alongside the Hughes and the Munsters of the world. It's really, really impressive to watch. And when you've got a big forward pack laying that platform, as we always talk about, watch out, because they're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Name dropping again, talking to Monty Beethan about Jerome Hughes. I love this guy. I love the way he's played this year. And he said, Marty, don't forget he started off as a fullback. When can you last remember a guy switching positions like that and making such an impact in such a key role where the ball is in his hands all the time like this?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I'm just delighted that Jerome Hughes has started to be recognised for the role that he's playing, because when you talk about the Melbourne Storm, and have talked about the Melbourne Storm in years gone by, it's always about Cameron Munster. It's always about Harry Grant. It's always about Ryan Pappenhausen. But it's never usually about the halfback, Jerome Hughes. I reckon he's the form halfback of the competition at the moment, the number 7. Yep. So, if he continues the form and carries the form that he's shown over the last few weeks, admittedly the weekend off helps leading into a prelim final, that's the reason why I think the Melbourne Storm are going to be too good.
It's Only Sport with Martin Devlin on the platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected.